A struggling single mom accidentally texted a billionaire asking for baby formula. You won't believe his response. Imagine an exhausted single mother, cradling her crying baby in the dead of night, desperately texting for help with baby formula, only to realize she's messaged the wrong number. But that number belongs to a reclusive billionaire, and his reply changes everything in ways no one could predict. What starts as a simple mistake spirals into a heart-wrenching tale of secrets, redemption, and unbreakable bonds. Eleanor's is a 28-year-old single mother living in a cramped apartment in downtown Chicago. Abandoned by her ex when she was pregnant, she works 2 jobs as a waitress and a freelance graphic designer to make ends meet. Her 6-month-old son, Liam, is her world, but tonight, the fridge is empty and she's out of baby formula. Before we begin the beautiful story, please subscribe, it's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Also like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The phone's blue light cast shadows across Eleanor's exhausted face as she sat in the dim apartment, her 6-month-old daughter Maya whimpering softly in her arms. It was 2:47 a.m., and the last can of formula had run out 3 hours ago. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through her contacts, looking for her sister's number. Sarah always came through in emergencies, even if Eleanor hated asking. But desperation has a way of making you do things you never thought you would. Eleanor's vision blurred with exhaustion as she typed out the message, "Please, I need help. Maya's out of formula and I don't get paid until Friday. Can you spare $30? I'll pay you back, I promise. I'm so sorry to ask again." She hit send and collapsed back against the worn couch, Maya's tiny fist clutching at her shirt. The apartment was silent except for the occasional car passing on the street below and the hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. Eleanor closed her eyes, fighting back tears. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. At 28, she'd imagined a different life, one where she wasn't counting pennies, where she wasn't failing her daughter before she'd even learned to crawl. Her phone buzzed. Eleanor's heart lifted with relief, but when she looked at the screen, confusion washed over her. The message wasn't from Sarah. "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. But I'd be happy to help. What kind of formula does your baby need, and where can I send it?" Eleanor's exhaustion-fogged brain struggled to process this. Wrong number. She quickly checked the contacts she'd messaged. Her stomach dropped. Instead of Sarah, sister, the name at the top read JS, apartment manager. Oh God. She'd texted her apartment building's management contact, the number she'd been given when she'd complained about the broken heating last winter. She'd never actually used it, and somehow it had gotten mixed up in her contacts near her sister's name. Eleanor's first instinct was to apologize and disappear into the embarrassment. But then Maya let out a hungry cry, and the reality of her situation crushed that impulse. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford at 2:47 a.m. with an empty formula container. With shaking fingers, she typed back, "I'm so sorry for the confusion. I thought I was texting my sister. I didn't mean to bother you. Please forget I asked." The response came almost immediately. "It's no bother at all. I'm awake anyway. Your baby needs food. Let me help. What do you need, and where should I send it?" Eleanor stared at the message, her exhausted mind trying to make sense of this stranger's kindness. Was this real? Was someone actually offering to help without judgment, without making her feel like a failure? She typed slowly, "Similac advance, if that's okay. But I can't accept this from a stranger. It's too much. Consider it a gift from one human to another. Give me your address, and I'll have it delivered within the hour. I promise, no strings attached." Eleanor looked down at Maya, whose face was scrunched up in pre-cry distress. The rational part of her brain screamed warnings about stranger danger, about accepting help from unknown numbers. But the mother in her, the part that would do anything for her daughter, made the decision. She sent her address. "Thank you," she added. "I don't know who you are, But thank you so much. I'll find a way to pay you back. No need. Just take care of your little one. What's her name? Maya. She's 6 months old. Beautiful name. The formula will be there soon. Try to get some rest. Eleanor didn't know if she could rest, not with the anxiety and confusion swirling through her mind. But 47 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery driver holding several large bags. When she opened the door, the driver smiled warmly. Delivery for Eleanor and Maya. Eleanor nodded, too shocked to speak as the driver handed her not one, but 6 cans of Similac Advance, along with boxes of diapers, baby wipes, and several jars of baby food. There's more in the car, the driver said cheerfully, making 2 more trips before Eleanor's tiny living room was transformed into a miniature baby supply store. Wait, Eleanor called out as the driver prepared to leave. Who paid for all this? The driver checked her phone. Says here it's from a James Davis. He also wanted me to give you this. She handed Eleanor an envelope. Eleanor's hand shook as she opened it after the driver left. Inside was a simple card with a handwritten note. Eleanor, I hope this helps ease your burden, even just for a little while. Being a mother is the hardest job in the world, and you're doing it alone. That takes incredible strength. You're not a failure for needing help. You're human. Take care of yourself and Maya. J.D. Also in the envelope was $500 in cash. Eleanor sank to the floor, surrounded by baby supplies, and finally let herself cry. Not from sadness or desperation this time, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing that, at least for now, Maya would be okay. And from the shock that somewhere in this city, a stranger had cared enough to help. She picked up her phone and typed, I don't have words for what you've done. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. You've saved us tonight. The response came a minute later. You don't need to thank me. But if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to check in tomorrow to make sure everything arrived okay. Get some sleep, Eleanor. You've got this. As Eleanor finally prepared a bottle for Maya, watching her daughter's eyes light up with relief and contentment, she had no idea that this accidental text message had just changed both of their lives forever. Because James Davis wasn't just a kind stranger with some spare cash. He was one of the wealthiest men in the city, a billionaire tech entrepreneur who'd been sitting alone in his penthouse office, unable to sleep, drowning in the emptiness of his success when that desperate message had appeared on his phone. And Eleanor's accidental plea for help had reminded him of something he'd forgotten years ago, what it meant to make a real difference in someone's life. This was just the beginning of their story. The next morning was Eleanor's reality. Eleanor woke up to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of her apartment, momentarily disoriented. For a blessed moment, she'd forgotten about the previous night's desperation. Then she saw the stacks of baby supplies lined against the wall, and the memories came flooding back. Maya cooed from her crib, a sound so different from the hungry cries of the night before. Eleanor pulled herself up, her body aching from the months of accumulated exhaustion, and went to her daughter. Maya's face broke into a gummy smile, and Eleanor felt her heart simultaneously break and mend. Good morning, sweet girl, she whispered, lifting Maya into her arms. Someone was very kind to us last night, wasn't they? As she changed Maya's diaper, one of the expensive ones from the delivery, so much better than the cheap store brand she usually bought, Eleanor's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Good morning. Just checking in. Did everything work out okay? It was him. J.D. James Davis. The stranger who'd shown her more kindness in a single night than she'd experienced in months. Eleanor sat on the edge of her bed, Maya balanced on her hip, and considered her response. Part of her wanted to maintain professional distance, to thank him politely and move on. But another part, the lonely, exhausted part that had been carrying the weight of single motherhood alone for too long, wanted to answer honestly. Good morning. Yes, everything is perfect. Maya slept through the rest of the night for the first time in weeks. I think she knew she'd finally get breakfast on time. I still can't believe what you did for us. I'm glad I could help. How are you doing? Eleanor looked around her small apartment, at the peeling paint on the walls, the second-hand furniture, the pile of bills on the kitchen counter. How was she doing? Honestly?
I'm overwhelmed.
Grateful, but also confused. Why would you do this for a complete stranger? There was a longer pause before his response came. Can I be honest with you? Please. I was having a really dark night last night. Sometimes success and money can make you feel more alone than poverty ever did. When your message came through, it was like the universe was reminding me that there are real problems in the world, real people struggling, and that I actually have the power to help. You didn't just receive help last night, Eleanor. You helped me too. Eleanor read the message 3 times, trying to understand this man who seemed to exist in a completely different world from hers, yet somehow understood loneliness just as deeply. I don't know what to say to that, she typed. But I'm glad my desperate 3 a.m. text could provide some cosmic balance to your night. She added a smiley face, then immediately regretted it. Was that too casual? Too familiar? But his response was warm. I appreciate the cosmic perspective. Listen, I know this is unconventional, but would you let me take you and Maya to breakfast? There's a family-friendly cafe downtown that I think you'd both enjoy. No pressure. I just feel like we accidentally stumbled into each other's lives last night, and I'd like to actually meet the person I'm texting with. Eleanor's mind raced. Every practical voice in her head shouted warnings. Meeting strange men from the internet, accepting gifts from people you don't know, putting your baby in potential danger, all the things every woman is taught to fear. But this didn't feel dangerous. It felt genuine. Still, she had to be smart. That's very kind of you, she typed. But I don't think it's a good idea. You've already done more than enough, and I don't want you to feel obligated to do anything else. Last night was an emergency, and I'm grateful, but I can't make a habit of accepting charity from strangers. Fair enough. I respect that. But for what it's worth, I don't feel obligated. I'd genuinely like to meet you both. How about this? The cafe is called Sunrise Corner on Madison Street. It's public, busy, safe. I'll be there tomorrow at 10 a.m., sitting at the table by the window. If you decide to come, great. If not, I'll understand completely, and I won't contact you again. Either way, please keep the supplies and the money. You don't owe me anything. Eleanor stared at the message for a long time. Tomorrow was Sunday, her one day off from the 2 part-time jobs she juggled. She usually spent it doing laundry and meal prep for the week, trying to maximize every minute of rest. I'll think about it, she replied. That's all I ask. Take care, Eleanor. Eleanor set down her phone and looked at Maya, who was trying to grab at her mother's hair with determined little fists. What do you think, baby girl? Is Mommy crazy for even considering this? Maya babbled something unintelligible but enthusiastic. Yeah, Eleanor sighed. That's what I thought. 43 floors above the city streets, James Davis stood in his penthouse office, staring out at the skyline that had once represented everything he'd worked for. Now it just felt like an expensive cage. At 34, James had achieved more than most people dream of in a lifetime. He'd built his tech company, Innovate Tech Solutions, from a college dorm room project into a multi-billion-dollar empire. Forbes featured him regularly. Tech conferences begged him to keynote. Investors lined up to be associated with his name. And he'd never felt more empty. His phone sat on the glass desk, silent now after his exchange with Eleanor. James picked it up and looked at their conversation again, a small smile crossing his face. There was something refreshingly real about her messages. No pretense, no agenda, just genuine human need and honest gratitude. He thought back to the previous night, to the moment when her message had appeared on his screen. He'd been sitting in this same spot, having just returned from yet another gala where people pretended to care about causes while really just networking and showing off. The meaninglessness of it all had been crushing him. Then came Eleanor's message, so raw and desperate and real. Without thinking, he'd responded. And in that moment of helping someone with an actual, tangible problem, James had felt more purpose than he had in years. Mr. Davis. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your 10 a.m. meeting with the investors from Singapore. James glanced at his calendar. Packed solid, as always. Meetings, calls, decisions worth millions of dollars. None of it felt as important as that text message exchange. "Cancel it," he said. "Sir." "Cancel it. Reschedule for next week. Actually, clear my afternoon too." "Is everything all right?" James looked at his phone again, at Eleanor's messages. "Yeah, Sarah. Everything's fine. I just need some time to think." After his assistant clicked off, James pulled up Eleanor's address on his phone. He'd used a delivery service to send the supplies, but he'd also done something else, something he probably shouldn't have. He'd looked her up. It hadn't been hard. Eleanor Martinez, age 28. Single mother. Working 2 part-time jobs, one as a waitress at a downtown diner, another doing overnight data entry from home. No social media presence beyond an old, rarely updated Facebook account. No family photos except one of her holding a tiny newborn in a hospital bed, smiling despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. No father in any of the pictures. James knew he was crossing boundaries by researching her, but he'd wanted to make sure his help was going to someone who genuinely needed it. What he'd found had both broken his heart and impressed him. Eleanor was fighting hard for her daughter, working impossible hours, trying to make it on her own. She reminded him of his own mother. James walked over to the wall of photos in his office, the one area where he'd allowed personal memories to intrude on his professional space. His eyes found the picture of his mother, Maria Davis, taken when he was 10 years old. She'd been a single mother too, working 3 jobs to keep them afloat after his father had abandoned them. Maria had died when James was 22, just 3 years before his company took off. She'd never gotten to see him succeed. She'd never gotten to stop worrying about money, to stop working herself to exhaustion, to finally rest. That regret haunted James every single day. Looking at Eleanor's situation felt like being given a second chance, a chance to help someone the way he'd wanted to help his mother but had been too young and powerless to do. He picked up his phone and called his head of security, Michael. "Michael, I need you to do something discreet for me." "Of course, sir. What do you need?" "There's a young woman, Eleanor Martinez. She lives in an apartment building on the east side. I've helped her out with some supplies, and I'm going to meet her tomorrow. I need you to have someone keep an eye on her building, make sure she's safe. But I need it completely invisible. She can't know anyone's watching." "Is there a threat we should be aware of?" "No, nothing like that. She's struggling, and she has a baby. I want to make sure she's okay." There was a pause. Michael had worked for James for 5 years and knew better than to question his boss's sometimes unconventional requests. "Consider it done, sir. Anything else?" "Yeah. Be prepared to possibly extend that protection long term. I have a feeling this isn't going to be a one-time thing." After hanging up, James returned to the window. The city sprawled beneath him, millions of people living their lives, struggling, surviving, occasionally thriving. Somewhere down there was Eleanor, probably trying to figure out if he was trustworthy, if she should take a chance on meeting him. He hoped she would, because for the first time in years, James felt like he might be able to do something that actually mattered. Saturday night arrived with its usual chaos. Maya was teething and fussy, refusing to sleep for more than 30 minutes at a time. Eleanor walked circles around her tiny apartment, bouncing her daughter gently and singing off-key lullabies, trying not to think about the breakfast invitation. But of course, she thought about nothing else. Every time she laid Maya down and collapsed on the couch, Eleanor would pick up her phone and read James's messages again. "I'll be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. The invitation was so simple, so casual, as if wealthy strangers invited struggling single moms to breakfast all the time. At 3 a.m., that cursed hour when everything feels more intense, Eleanor finally got Maya to sleep and sat at her kitchen table with a cup of cheap instant coffee. She pulled out a notebook and did what she always did when facing a difficult decision. She made a list. "Reasons not to go," she wrote at the top of one column. "He's a complete stranger. It could be dangerous. He might expect something in return. I'll feel even more indebted to him. What if he's some kind of weirdo? I don't have anything appropriate to wear. I'll just embarrass myself. This whole situation is too good to be true. Then she created a second column, reasons Tio go. He seems genuinely kind. It's a public place. Maya needs to get out of the apartment. When was the last time someone wanted to spend time with me? He helped us without asking for anything. What if he's just a good person? I'm tired of being afraid of everything. Life is short, and I spend too much of it just surviving. Eleanor stared at her two lists, realizing that they were perfectly balanced, 8 reasons on each side. She needed a tiebreaker. She looked over at Maya's crib, at her daughter sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, her belly full of the formula that James had provided. Then Eleanor's eyes drifted to the stack of bills on the counter, to the eviction warning she'd received 2 weeks ago. First notice, it said, but Eleanor knew a second notice would follow soon enough, to the calendar where she'd marked which days she could afford to eat more than ramen noodles. The truth was, she'd been making safe choices her entire life. She'd dated a safe guy, gotten pregnant, and then watched that safe guy vanish the moment 2 lines appeared on a pregnancy test. She'd taken safe jobs that paid just enough to survive but never enough to thrive. She'd played by all the rules, and the rules had still left her desperate enough to text a stranger at 3 a.m. begging for baby formula. Maybe it was time to take a chance. Eleanor picked up her phone and typed, "I'll be there tomorrow.
10 Uhr morgens.
But I'm bringing my own money for breakfast, and I can only stay for an hour." She held her thumb over the send button for a full minute before finally pressing it. The response came quickly, too quickly for 3 a.m. Was he awake too? Perfect. I look forward to meeting you both. And Eleanor, you don't need to bring money, but I respect your independence. See you tomorrow. Eleanor set down her phone and released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She'd done it. She'd said yes to something uncertain, something that wasn't part of her careful survival plan. It was terrifying. It was also the first time in months that she'd felt something besides exhaustion and worry. Sunday morning arrived bright and cold. Eleanor changed her outfit 4 times before settling on the only decent clothes she owned. A simple blue dress she'd worn to a job interview 2 years ago and a cardigan with only one small stain that she could hide with her hair. She dressed Maya in the cutest outfit they had, a hammer-down from a coworker with the tag still on it. As Eleanor struggled with the stroller on the bus, because of course she didn't have a car, she questioned her decision approximately 15 times. But she'd committed now, and Eleanor Martinez might be poor and exhausted, but she wasn't a flake. Sunrise Corner Cafe was located in a neighborhood Eleanor rarely visited, the kind of area where people wore designer athleisure to get coffee and small dogs wore better accessories than Eleanor's entire wardrobe. She felt immediately out of place pushing her second-hand stroller down the pristine sidewalk. Through the cafe's large windows, she could see a man sitting alone at a table, checking his watch. He wore a simple grey sweater and jeans, but even from outside, Eleanor could tell they probably cost more than her monthly rent. His dark hair was slightly messy in that deliberately casual way that actually requires effort, and even though he was sitting down, she could tell he was tall. He looked up and their eyes met through the glass. James Davis, because it had to be him, broke into a smile that completely transformed his face. He'd looked serious, almost stern, but that smile was warm and genuine. He stood up and waved. Eleanor took a deep breath, adjusted Maya in the stroller, and pushed through the cafe door. "Eleanor?" James asked, walking over immediately. Up close, he was even more intimidating, not in a threatening way, but in the way that exceptionally successful people often are. He had presence. "That's me," Eleanor said, forcing her voice to sound confident. "And this is Maya." James crouched down to look at the stroller, his entire demeanor softening. "Hello, Maya. It's very nice to meet you." He looked up at Eleanor. "She's beautiful." "Thank you." Eleanor fidgeted with the stroller handle. "I hope we are not late. The bus took longer than expected." "You're right on time. Come sit down. Can I help with the stroller?" Together they maneuvered the stroller to the table by the window, the one James had promised to be at. Eleanor noticed he'd already ordered coffee and water, and there was a high chair waiting. "I hope you don't mind," James said, gesturing to the high chair. "I asked the staff if they had one when I arrived." That was thoughtful. "Thank you." They settled in, Eleanor lifting Maya into the high chair while James politely pretended not to notice her struggling with the buckle. When they were finally seated across from each other, Eleanor felt the full weight of the awkwardness descend. What do you say to a stranger who rescued you from desperation? James seemed to sense her discomfort. "I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Eleanor admitted. "But I figured, what's the worst that could happen? You turn out to be a serial killer, and at least Maya and I get one nice breakfast before we die." James laughed, a genuine, surprised laugh. "Well, I can assure you I'm not a serial killer. I don't have the organizational skills required. I'm told serial killers are very methodical." That's exactly what a serial killer would say. Fair point. James grinned. "How about we order food, and I'll try to prove my non-murderous intentions through my breakfast choices." A waitress appeared, and James ordered confidently, pancakes, fruit, eggs, bacon, hash browns. "Just bring a little of everything," he said. "And whatever the chef recommends." Eleanor opened the menu, saw the prices, and immediately felt her stomach clench. $16 for an omelette? $20 for French toast? "Just coffee for me," she said, closing the menu quickly. "Eleanor." James's voice was gentle but firm. "Please order food. You came all this way, and I promise you, the money is not an issue for me. If it makes you feel better, consider it payment for giving me the chance to have a normal conversation with someone who doesn't want anything from me." Eleanor met his eyes. They were kind, but also a bit sad. She saw something in them that she recognized: loneliness. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll have the spinach and mushroom omelette. And some fruit for Maya, if that's possible." "Of course," the waitress said warmly, taking their menus. When they were alone again, James leaned back in his chair. "So, Eleanor Martinez, tell me your story. How did you end up texting a wrong number at 3 a.m.? Eleanor laughed despite herself. "That's quite a question. Most people start with 'How's the weather?' I've never been good at small talk." Apparently neither have I, since I opened with a serial killer joke. Eleanor took a sip of water, gathering her thoughts. "My story's not that interesting, really. I'm 28, I have a 6-month-old daughter, I work 2 jobs, and I'm barely keeping my head above water. That's the summary." "What about before Maya? What did you want to be?" The question caught Eleanor off guard. No one had asked her about her dreams in so long that she'd almost forgotten she had them. "I wanted to be a teacher," she said slowly. "Elementary school. I was actually in college, studying education, when I met Maya's father. I got pregnant my junior year, and everything just fell apart after that." "What happened?" Eleanor hesitated. She'd learned to give the sanitized version of her story, the one that didn't make people uncomfortable. But something about James's direct gaze, about the way he was actually listening, made her want to tell the truth. Maya's father, Derek, seemed like a good guy. We'd been dating for 8 months, and I thought we had something real. When I got pregnant, I was scared but also kind of excited. I thought we'd figure it out together. Eleanor looked down at Maya, who was playing with a napkin. Derek had a different reaction. He gave me money for an abortion, said he wasn't ready to be a father, and when I told him I wanted to keep the baby, he told me I was ruining both our lives. He transferred to a school on the West Coast 2 weeks later. I haven't heard from him since. "I'm sorry," James said quietly. "Don't be. I'm not." Eleanor was surprised to find she meant it. "The first few months after he left were the hardest of my life. I had to drop out of school, move out of my campus housing, find a job while pregnant. My parents, they weren't supportive. They said I'd made my choice and I'd have to live with it. So I did. I moved here, to this city where I didn't know anyone, and I started over. That takes courage." Or stupidity. I'm not sure which. Eleanor smiled wryly. But then Maya was born, and suddenly everything made sense. All the struggle, all the fear, it was worth it. She's worth everything. James watched Eleanor's face as she looked at her daughter, and something shifted in his expression. You're a good mother. I'm trying to be. Most days I feel like I'm failing. The fact that you feel that way probably means you're doing better than you think. Their food arrived, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. Maya gnawed happily on pieces of soft banana, getting more of it on her face than in her mouth. Your turn, Eleanor said eventually. I spilled my entire sob story. What's yours? James set down his fork. What makes you think I have a sob story? Because you were awake at 3 a.m. and depressed enough that a desperate text from a stranger made your night better. Happy people don't usually fit that profile. James laughed, that same genuine laugh from before. You're perceptive. I'm a waitress. You learn to read people. Fair enough. James took a sip of coffee, considering his words. My story is almost the opposite of yours. My mother raised me alone. My father left when I was 8. She worked constantly, trying to give me opportunities she never had. She wanted me to go to college, to have a better life. Did you? I did. I got into MIT on a full scholarship, studied computer science, started a company with my roommate. Everything took off faster than I could have imagined. By 25, I was a millionaire. By 30, a billionaire. Eleanor nearly choked on her omelette. Wait, billionaire? As in, billion with a B. James looked uncomfortable. Yes. Oh my God. Eleanor set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. I texted a billionaire asking for baby formula. You texted a person who happened to have the resources to help. The number with a B doesn't change that. But Eleanor's mind was reeling. She'd known he was wealthy. The ease with which he'd sent hundreds of dollars worth of supplies had made that clear. But billion was a different category entirely. That was private jets and multiple homes and influence she couldn't even comprehend. Why are you here? She asked suddenly. Why did you really help me? People like you don't just do this. James was quiet for a moment. My mother died when I was 22. She worked herself to death, literally. Heart attack at 47. She never got to see me succeed. She never got to stop worrying about money, to stop working 3 jobs, to just rest. His voice was thick with emotion. When your message came through, all I could think was that you sounded like her. Desperate, exhausted, doing everything for your child. And I had the chance to help you in a way I never could help her. Eleanor felt tears prickling her eyes. James, I'm so sorry. Don't be. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because you asked why I'm here, and that's the honest answer. When I help you, it feels like I'm helping her. Like maybe all the success means something after all. They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the cafe fading into the background. 2 strangers connected by loss, loneliness, and an accidental text message. Maya chose that moment to spit out a chunk of banana, breaking the heavy mood. Both Eleanor and James laughed, and just like that, the awkwardness dissolved. She's a great tension breaker, Eleanor said, wiping Maya's face. She's perfect. James smiled at the baby. How old did you say she was? 6 months. Though some days it feels like 6 years. I can't imagine how exhausting it must be. It's... Eleanor paused, looking for the right words. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Every day is a struggle. But it's also the most meaning my life has ever had. Does that make sense? It does. James met her eyes. More than you know. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing more naturally than Eleanor would have ever expected. James asked about her jobs, her life, her plans. She asked about his company, his work, what it was like to live a life so different from hers. It's lonely, James admitted. People always want something. They see the money, the success, the opportunities. They don't see me. What do you mean? I mean that I can't remember the last time someone was genuinely interested in who I am rather than what I can do for them. Every interaction feels transactional. Every friendship feels conditional. He looked down at his empty plate. That probably sounds ungrateful. I have more than I ever dreamed of having. But you don't have what you really want, Eleanor said softly. What do you think I really want? The same thing everyone wants. To be seen. To matter to someone. To have connections that aren't based on what you can provide. James looked up at her, surprise evident in his expression. How did you? Because I feel the same way, Eleanor interrupted. Just from the opposite direction. People look at me and see a charity case, a cautionary tale, someone to pity. They don't see me either. They see my circumstances. But you're so much more than your circumstances. And you're so much more than your bank account. They stared at each other across the table, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. In a cafe full of people, two lonely souls had somehow found each other. Can I be honest about something? James asked. Please. I'd like to keep seeing you. Not as a charity project or an obligation, but as a friend. Someone I can talk to honestly. Would that be okay? Eleanor's first instinct was to say no, to protect herself from the inevitable disappointment and complications. But then she looked at this man who'd shown her nothing but kindness, who'd shared his own pain with surprising vulnerability, and she realized she wanted the same thing. I'd like that, she said. As long as we are clear about something. What's that? I can't pay you back for what you've done, and I won't let you keep giving me things. If we are going to be friends, it has to be equal. I can't be your charity project. James nodded slowly. I understand. But can I offer a counter-proposal? I'm listening. Let me help you with one more thing, just one. And then after that, we are even, and anything else is just two friends spending time together. Deal? Eleanor was immediately suspicious. What's the one thing? Let me pay off your rent arrears. I know you have an eviction notice. How did you? I saw it on your counter when the delivery driver sent me a photo confirmation of the drop-off, James said quickly. It was a lie. He'd actually found out through his research, but he sensed that Eleanor would be more upset if she knew the truth. I don't want you and Maya to lose your home. Let me fix that one thing, give you a stable foundation, and then we are done. After that, we are just two people getting to know each other. No more hero complex, I promise. Eleanor wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her pride and independence. But she thought about that eviction notice, about the very real possibility that she and Maya could be out on the street in a matter of weeks. Just the rent, she said finally. And that's it. After that, we are friends on equal ground. Deal? James extended his hand across the table. Eleanor shook it, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. She had no idea that this handshake, this agreement, was about to change the entire trajectory of her life. Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor and James fell into an unexpected rhythm. True to his word, James paid off her rent arrears, $3,400 that had been hanging over her head like a sword. But after that, things shifted. They became something Eleanor had almost forgotten existed. Friends. They texted throughout the day, James sharing photos from his boring board meetings, Eleanor sending him pictures of Maya's latest messy meal disasters. They met for coffee twice more, always at public places, always with Maya between them like a tiny chaperone. James never tried to give her money. Eleanor never asked for any. They were just two people enjoying each other's company. But the universe, as it often does, had other plans. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Eleanor's phone rang at 11 p.m. It was James, and his voice was strained. Eleanor, I'm sorry to call so late. Can I ask you something? Of course. What's wrong? There's a charity gala tomorrow night. It's for children's literacy programs, and I'm supposed to give a speech. But I hate these things. All the fake conversations and networking. Would you consider coming with me? As my friend? Eleanor looked around her tiny apartment, at Maya sleeping in her crib, at her waitress uniform hanging on the back of a chair. James, I don't have anything to wear to a gala. I don't even know what a gala is, really, except what I've seen in movies. I'll take care of the dress. Please, Eleanor. I just need one real person there. Someone who'll remind me why this stuff matters. Something in his voice, a vulnerability she recognized, made her say yes. The next evening, a dress arrived. Not flashy or over the top, but elegant and beautiful, a deep blue that matched her eyes. Eleanor stared at herself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman looking back. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, agreed to watch Maya for the evening. The gala was in a world Eleanor had only imagined. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, women in gowns that cost more than her annual salary. She felt like an imposter, but then James found her in the crowd, and his face lit up. You came, he said, relief evident in his voice. I came, though I feel like Cinderella before midnight. You look beautiful. Come on, let me introduce you to some people. The evening was overwhelming. Eleanor met CEOs and philanthropists, politicians and celebrities. James introduced her simply as my friend Eleanor, never mentioning her circumstances, treating her as his equal. When someone asked what she did, James answered before she could feel embarrassed, Eleanor's taking time to raise a daughter. It's the most important job there is. During his speech about children's literacy, James spoke about his mother, about how education had been her dream for him. His voice cracked with emotion, and Eleanor found tears in her own eyes. She understood, perhaps better than anyone in that room, what he was really saying. After the speech, a woman in an expensive gown approached them. James, darling, your speech was moving. And who is this? Victoria, this is Eleanor.
Eleanor, Victoria Harwell.
She runs the literacy foundation we are supporting tonight. Victoria's smile was calculating as she looked Eleanor up and down. Lovely to meet you. How do you know James? We are friends, Eleanor said simply. How nice. Victoria's tone suggested it was anything but. She turned to James. We should discuss the funding proposal. Privately. James looked at Eleanor apologetically, but she waved him off. Go. I'll be fine. Alone, Eleanor wandered toward the balcony, needing air. She just stepped outside when she heard voices, Victoria and another woman, speaking just around the corner. Did you see James's date? The waitress playing dress-up. How do you know she's a waitress? Please, it's obvious. Probably hoping to trap him into something. You know these single mothers, always looking for a meal ticket. Eleanor's face burned with humiliation. She should leave, should go before they saw her. But anger rooted her to the spot. Actually, Eleanor said, stepping around the corner, I'm not trying to trap anyone. James is my friend. And yes, I'm a waitress and a single mother. But at least I'm honest about who I am. Can you say the same? Victoria's face went pale, then red. How dare you? I dare because I have nothing to lose. You look at me and see someone beneath you. But you know what I see when I look at you. Someone so empty inside that you need to tear others down to feel important. Eleanor walked away, her hand shaking. She found James still talking to donors and caught his eye. He immediately excused himself. Hey, what happened? You look upset. I need to leave.
I'm sorry, James.
I don't belong here. What? Eleanor, talk to me. She told him about Victoria, about the cruel words, about how it reminded her that they came from different worlds. This was a mistake. We are too different. Your friends will never accept someone like me. James's jaw tightened. Then I don't need those friends. He took her hand. Eleanor, look at me. I don't care what Victoria thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks. You're the most genuine person I've met in years. Don't let their judgment make you feel less than you are. But they're right, aren't they? What am I doing here, pretending I fit into your world? You're not pretending anything. You're being yourself, which is more than most people here can say. James squeezed her hand. And for what it's worth, you fit into my world better than anyone else ever has. Eleanor looked up at him, seeing something in his eyes that made her breath catch. This wasn't just friendship anymore, was it? James, I can't. This is complicated. I know. But can I tell you what I've learned in the past few weeks? Money doesn't buy happiness. Success doesn't cure loneliness. But having someone who sees you, really sees you, that's worth everything. You barely know me. I know you're strong. I know you love your daughter more than anything. I know you make me laugh and challenge me and remind me what's important. I know that when I'm with you, I feel more like myself than I have in years. He paused. And I know I'm falling for you, even though it's crazy and fast and probably a terrible idea. Eleanor's heart hammered in her chest. This can't work. Your life, my life, they're too different. So we'll figure it out. Together. James smiled. Unless you don't feel the same way. Then I'll back off, and we'll just be friends. But Eleanor, if there's any part of you that feels what I feel. Of course I feel it, Eleanor interrupted. I've been trying not to because it terrifies me. You could have anyone, James. Why would you want someone who comes with so much baggage? Because you're not baggage. You're real. And Maya isn't baggage either. She's this amazing little person who's lucky to have you as a mother. He moved closer. I don't want someone from my world, Eleanor. I want you. What if I hurt you? What if this falls apart? What if it doesn't? Eleanor looked at this man who'd accidentally stumbled into her life through a misdirected text message. This man who'd shown her kindness without expectation, who'd shared his own pain, who made her feel seen for the first time in so long. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. James's smile was brighter than all the chandeliers in the ballroom. He pulled her close, and when he kissed her, Eleanor felt the pieces of her broken life start to shift into a new pattern, one that included hope. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in her new apartment, not the cramped studio she'd been evicted from despite James's payment. The landlord had found another excuse, but a modest 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood that she paid for herself. James had helped her find it, but Eleanor covered the rent with her new job. After the gala, James had introduced her to the director of his company's non-profit arm. They were looking for someone to coordinate their community outreach programs. The pay was modest by James's world standards but life-changing for Eleanor, enough to support herself and Maya comfortably, with benefits and reasonable hours. You earned this position, James had insisted when Eleanor worried about nepotism. I made one introduction. You impressed them in the interview all on your own. Now, Eleanor worked with communities to develop literacy and education programs, drawing on her own experiences and her interrupted education degree. It was meaningful work that made her feel like she was making a difference. Maya, now 1 year old, toddled around the apartment with James following behind her, making sure she didn't crash into anything. It was Saturday afternoon, their routine day together. She's getting fast, James called out as Maya headed toward the kitchen. She's discovered running, Eleanor laughed. God help us all. Things between Eleanor and James had developed slowly, carefully. He'd met Maya properly, becoming a constant presence in their lives. Eleanor had been terrified of Maya getting attached only to have him leave, but James proved himself again and again. He showed up for the hard moments, teething nights, doctor's appointments, mundane afternoons that were anything but glamorous. But James had reminded her that she deserved more than just survival. She deserved joy, love, partnership, hope. When Maya was asleep, Eleanor returned to the living room to find James looking at something on his phone. He looked up with a smile. I just got an email from the Literacy Foundation. They want to expand the program you developed to 3 more cities. Eleanor, your work is making a real difference. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes again, happy tears this time. Really? Really? You're changing lives, just like I knew you would. I couldn't have done it without you. No, you would have. Maybe not in the same way or on the same timeline, but you're talented and passionate and driven. I just opened a door. You walk through it. Eleanor moved to sit beside him on the couch. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I felt invisible. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for texting the wrong number, James replied with a grin. Best mistake ever. The best. They sat in comfortable silence, Eleanor's head on James's shoulder, watching the afternoon light filter through the windows of her new apartment. Outside, the city hummed with life. Millions of people living their stories, struggling and surviving and occasionally thriving. And somewhere in that vast urban landscape, another person might be having their own desperate moment, their own 3 a.m. crisis, their own seemingly impossible situation. Eleanor hoped they would find their own unexpected salvation, whatever form it took. Because she'd learned that help could come from the strangest places, that hope could arrive through wrong numbers and accidental connections, and that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually the beginning of something beautiful. Her phone buzzed one more time. Her mother. I understand. How about coffee next week? Just us. I want to hear about your life. Eleanor showed James, who squeezed her hand supportively. She typed back, coffee works. But we're meeting on my side of town, at my convenience. And James will be there with me. Bringing reinforcements. James asked with a smile. Bringing family, Eleanor corrected. And as she hit send on that message, Eleanor realized that was the truth of it. James wasn't just her boyfriend or her friend. He was family. The family she'd chosen, the family that had chosen her back, the family that had formed through chaos and kindness and an accidental text message that had changed everything. Maya stirred in her crib, making small sleeping sounds. Eleanor went to check on her, finding her daughter peaceful and safe, dreaming whatever dreams 1-year-olds dream. Sweet dreams, baby girl, Eleanor whispered. You'll never know how close we came to losing everything. But you'll always know love. That's my promise to you. She returned to the living room where James was waiting, and as he pulled her close, Eleanor let herself believe in happy endings. Not the fairy tale kind where everything was perfect, but the real kind, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Because sometimes, the most beautiful love stories start with wrong numbers, desperate pleas, and strangers who choose kindness when they don't have to. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those strangers become the love of your life. Moral thoughts of our beautiful story today. Eleanor and James's story reminds us that hope can arrive in the most unexpected ways, that kindness is never wasted, and that the connections we need most often find us when we least expect them. Their journey from a misdirected text to a lifetime commitment proved that love doesn't follow a script. It writes its own story, one genuine moment at a time. Thanks for taking your precious time watching. Please, before you leave, don't forget to subscribe, like and comment where you are watching from.